For the second and final time this season, we return to home soil for Porsche. With that extra bit of emphasis on the win, will it spur any of our drivers to find those final fractions of a second? We'll find out soon as we get ready to watch round 11 of the Porsche Owners Club Series, and you'll see it all live here on the Global Sim Racing Channel. Hi, I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Roush Racing driver Joey Atterbury. Behind the scenes is our director Christian Duploy, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. This isn't the Hockenheim of old, but it's still quite fast. Let's head to our track guide to learn more. Welcome to Hockenheim. Located just an hour away from the border of France, this is a German track whose nature has changed drastically over its history. Once an eye-watering blast through long straights in the forest, it has since been truncated to its current format. With 6 different layouts ranging between 2.5 and 4.5 kilometers containing 13 to 16 turns, depending on which you choose, it's got something for just about every level of racing. This means it would fit everything from club cars up to Formula One. And that's perhaps what it's most well known for. One of the regular hosts for the German Grand Prix, it has been the scene of multiple dramatic moments, some triumphant, some tragic. Its redesign in the early 2000s gave it a few well-placed overtaking spots. The Parabolica entrance can create a good sneak attack, but even if you don't get it done there, the huge run towards the tight and slow Spitz curve is the place most well known for overtakes. If neither of those work, on rare occasions, Mercedes Corner can see drivers manage to pass one another. While the straights certainly aren't as long as the old version, it still requires a good deal of top speed to be competitive. But driver beware. Throttle control can often make or break your lap on the latter half of the circuit. All in all, German race fans can be assured to find great action no matter your tastes in racing at this fantastic venue. Well, if I had to describe this place, Joey, with what they did since they modified it years ago, I'd say it's more of a point and shoot now.
It's definitely an interesting track. A German manufacturer's backyard, essentially, in Hockenheim, Germany. There, 2.84 miles, 16 turns in length, and a couple little areas that are kind of tricky to deal with, including turn number 1 is wide open on the entry, but trust me, it is very, very narrow on the exit. And then turn 2 following is incredibly tight, but the most important part that can be actually a little bit tricky is putting the power down through kind of the 2-3-4 complex that leads you into that huge Parabolica straightaway. And then, of course, turn number 6, make sure you nail that brake marker. That's that hairpin all the way over in the top right part of the track. And then kind of 2 technical stadium sections, call it, to end out the lap. I really like the kind of sector 3 between turn 11 and turn 16. Those are the final turns of this racetrack over here. I think it really has a lot of character. It's got a lot of natural camber built into the racetrack, and the corners really come at you pretty quick.
Interesting that that's your favorite, because that's the only part that's essentially untouched from what it originally was, and should be a difficult one to try and overtake in, though, is the unfortunate part, because it's also extremely narrow in that part. Now, before we get to the racing, we do want to mention the sponsors of this series, which includes Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Top Gun MG, helping financial advisors be the best of the best. Contact them today at topgunmg.com. That is topgunmg.com. Now, as for the championship situation, I believe we should see things be able to be clinched by both of our champions, or potential champions, here this evening. BJ Fulton here in the prototypes with a massive gap of 53 points over Michael Johnson. Considering Michael cannot be here today, that might actually be all she wrote already. AJ Roper, with his DNF last week, unfortunately bit him severely, and he's fallen down to 3rd behind Michael, but he'll be likely to get that back. He and Jad Duncan, though, tied on that 3rd spot, so it'll be up to them to decide who comes out ahead, or will Dylan Scott maybe beat them both to the punch with only 3 points between the two of them and Dylan. Of course, we also have the GT1 championship as well here, Joey.
Yeah, these drivers are using those production-based cars, and it really has been a story of Matt Steele dominating this season. He found victory lane again last round out. We'll see if he can do it here in qualifying and at this round at Hockenheim. But I think the fight is actually on for second place right here. Doug Boccignone currently holds on to it narrowly 2 points over Mark Rondeau, who's sitting there in third place. And also, don't count out Federico Del Toro. He's only about 13 points out of that second place position. We also got Jeff Schulam inside the top 5 as well. Larry Haas, John Momeyer, Robert Leclerc, Jim Garamani, and Matthew Hollander have all taken place in this year's championship.
As for this year's championship, we're nearing the end of it as we are into round 11, as I mentioned, of 13 this season. And as we have been doing all season long, we've got 2 classes that are going to be running. The GT1 class runs the Porsche 911 GT3R, and then you've got the prototype class, which runs the Porsche 963 GTP. 30-minute race, so it's very quick around here, and it's open setup this season, which is a bit of a new thing compared to previous seasons of recent. And drivers will try to get a lot of top speed out of the cars here today. We'll see who will be able to do that, and will they be able to take advantage of it down into the Spitzkara hairpin, because that's definitely going to be one of the hot spots for pass attempts if you do have that car trimmed out. We're in the midst of qualifying right now, Joey, and Dylan Scott actually has the prototype pole position, with Matt Steele sitting on the pole in the GT1s. Rondeau, though, not on track to try and take that back from him.
I think it's actually pretty close for second place. I should say for pole position in both of the categories. Only about 38 thousandths separating Jad Duncan and Dylan Scott there in the prototypes. And I'm looking down here in the GTs. Only about a quarter of a second separate Rondeau and Matt Steele. And just as I say that, there goes the 83 of Jad Duncan to the top, setting that purple fast lap, taking away provisional pole.
Ooh, that could be big. So Jad Duncan, as we mentioned, only 3 points ahead, is going to be in a bit of a precarious position. Ian Roche in behind him, and don't have AJ Roper here today as well. So Dylan and Jad have a good chance to try and make up some important ground to set themselves up well for the final 2 races of the season. And Jeffrey Schulam coming out of the hairpin, trying to see if he can make a 140.1 any quicker, and he's hovering right about at his best lap time, so he could jump up from this 5th spot if he can keep this up.
That was through, call it the first stadium section there, kind of coming out of turn number 10 right here into this short straightaway, hit this Mobile 1 curve, turn number 11, and really dive into the old school stadium section here. This is that area of the racetrack that I think has a lot of character into it. It's a lot more narrow compared to other areas on this circuit, but I just like the use of the curbs, the natural undulations in the track, and really there's actually a ton of grip out there until you kind of overstep it and find out where the dirty offline part is. See if you can actually improve this lap time here, 139.872. That will improve his lap, but I don't see it improving on the board.
No, looks like that was not quick enough to get ahead of Robert Leclerc. So he stays in 5th for now, and he's got just a couple moments left. Yeah, he should be able to complete this hot lap here. So this is his last opportunity. Matt Steele's still the fastest up there at a 38.9, but he is in pit lane. Doug Boccignone is out there, but he's got to make up what looks to be about 0.3 of a second to catch up to Matt Steele. That's going to be a tall order to take that pole away.
See if you can keep it nice and tidy. This is exactly where we picked up Schulam on this previous lap as well. Really keeping it tight to the apex there, trying to focus on putting the power down and getting the launch down the straightaway here. Looks pretty good so far, but you can definitely lose a lot of time here in this next set of corners.
He's going to be the first to take the checkered flag in this qualifying session. Comes up and around the Sachs curve, and then now into the South curve as well. where it wraps it up, but you got to be careful about that big sausage curb around the outside. Just glances it like you want to do, but he looked a little wide on the second apex, so that might have hurt his time. Where is it going to put him? 39.2 is not going to be quicker. He'll have to settle for third at best.
I wonder if he also got an off track there, if that would even make that lap count. Let's see if Jeff Shulam crosses the line here, what he can do. 139.987, so not going to improve his lap time either. And I think that's going to do it for the qualifying session.
Indeed, it does. Everybody is now finished out there with their times. You may have noticed that it is pretty hazy looking, and though there is a small chance of rain in the near future, it looks like. It was saying that we might have a tiny chance of rain now, but that percentage has since changed on our predictor in the sim. So it kind of gets kicked down the road a little bit. And I know a few drivers were trying out those wet tires, but I don't think that'll do you much good practicing them in the dry.
No, it won't. I actually have some experience with wet tires in the dry way back when I was doing the Volkswagen Jetta TDI Cup, Joe. They were a little nervous about mixed weather, and so they thought it would be best to just put everybody out there on rain tires. And the best way I can describe it is you start to overheat those tread blocks, and this is going to sound a little bit funny, a little amusing. It's like driving on a block of gummy bears. Just everything is moving around like melted gummy bears underneath you. It was just a very odd sensation of the car really moving around.
Definitely want to be on the right tire at the right time and not put them on too soon if we do get some weather. But for now, we're going to go to our starting grid for today's race. Bit of a smaller field as Jad Duncan starts on the pole in the prototypes. Dylan Scott going to be starting next to him. Ian Roche will be P3, followed by Dustin Heindel in fourth and Will Castillo in the fifth position. What about our GT1 class out there, Joey?
It is Matt Steele, your pole sitter in that number 6. Mark Rondeau will be joined up next to him on the front row starting second. Doug Boccignone will be in third with Robert Leclerc next to him in fourth. Jeffrey Shulam in fifth, Larry Haas in sixth, and then John Momeyer will round out our 7-car field.
So 12 total going to be taking part here in round 11 out of 13. So I was checking the weather predictions, and again, it looks like it's lessened a little bit to where by the end of this race, it'll still only be somewhere around 10%, even less than 10%. But I do see a little bit of color popping up on my radar. As you can see, it's understandably cool out on the track, and really the radar is the thing that we want to watch because that is telling us where there is actually precipitation hitting the ground.
Got my fingers crossed that everybody is out there on the dry tires. I actually see a couple of the GT cars that maybe are on wet tires. Maybe they're expecting that little bit of precipitation to hit a little bit earlier than kind of what we see on our weather tab in the session here. But I think for right now, I would definitely want to be on dry tires.
I would as well. That's quite the gamble, but they are two of the cars towards the very back that have wet tires on right now. So maybe they've got nothing to lose in that sense. And we have to remember there is also, of course, the potential for a full course yellow on the first lap. So keep your eyes peeled. So that is automatically thrown by software they use in the sim if they accrue enough incident points. And this is a modern F1 track, Joey, and we've seen in the past that can sometimes just be by the mere fact of drivers going off track enough times.
Lap 1 is always full of commotion out there, so I'm not surprised, and I actually like having the possibility of a yellow flag. I do think it can kind of break up the race in the sense that this is a sprint race and sometimes the yellow flag laps can get long. I don't think that we're going to have that situation here at Hockenheim, but we're going to see if those off tracks, I mean, they come at you really fast. Turn 1, turn 2, and turn 6 right here are all hot areas for those incident points.
Keep it between the white lines as they now enter the stadium section. And Chad Duncan will have control soon enough. They wait behind the Porsche pace car. One of the cool things that iRacing actually did with this track is that they actually have a Porsche test track for the Porsche experience that you can go and do at this place. It's not really meant for racing, but it is fun for hot lapping, as it's kind of a almost autocross type course on the infield of this circuit. So if you own this in iRacing, give that a look and maybe try it out, see if you enjoy it, as the pace car is now in. And Chad Duncan looks for the call from the flag stand. Dylan's going to try to beat him down into turn one. That'll be tough from the outside. He'll have to swing across him. Green flag is out. It's a decent start for Chad. And behind him, Ian Roche looking like he's quite good, but he's not far enough alongside. Almost gets into the side of Dylan Scott. They'll make it clean through the first corner. Looks like our GT1s did as well, but now the braking into turn two sees Chad Duncan hold on to that lead.
Now this is really important, is being able to put the power down coming out of turns 2 and 3. And there goes, I believe that's Will Castillo spinning off to the driver's right-hand side of the track. Careful with those GT cars. It is Matt Steele that is currently leading the way in that GT category. Mark Rondeau in second place, as our leaders and Prototype are making their way through the hairpin.
Ian with another look up the inside of Dylan Scott. Couldn't quite make it, though. Meanwhile, look at how close Rondeau is to Matt Steele. Surely he wants to try and take that track position away, if possible, at the start of this race. In the past, Matt Steele tends to run away, except when we have Federico Del Toro here. Oh, that was a big mistake from Steele. Coming into Mercedes, he hands it over with ease to Rondeau.
He had a couple big mistakes right here, and he's actually under threat right now from Doug Bonchignon. Matt Steele has got to collect it up. There's still plenty of time left in this race. Remember, we're only on lap number 1. Sometimes just got to take a deep breath, hit that mental reset button, and get back to it. Forget what's in this mirror and focus forward.
Uncharacteristic first lap for Matt Steele there, but like you said, yeah, lots of laps that he can try to make this one back. And on top of things, they got Will Castillo now from the Prototypes, making his way right back through, and the car looks very unsteady underneath him as he finds all kinds of wheel spin off the final turn.
So Matt Steele definitely had trouble in turn number 6. He got in way too deep. That kind of allowed Mark Rondeau that initial run where he had made the comment about how close he was, and then going into that turn 8 complex, he actually got a little bit of a wiggle from the corner prior. That really just kind of blew off the whole braking zone. You saw him getting crazy deep, and Mark Rondeau was just on top of all of his spots, hit every single marker that he needed to, and was just essentially gifted the lead. But I wonder what's going to happen when this pink number 6 finally has that tire temperature underneath him.
Rondeau's got a single win so far, and that came at round 9 of this season. So can he make it 2 and help himself out and catch up to Doug Bonchignon, especially considering Doug's still down in third? This is a great chance for him to strike back. There was only 2 points between them coming into this round.
Check out this battle for 5th here. Larry Haas and then John Momeyer, Jeff Schulam. 3 cars all headed towards turn number 8. Schulam really deep on the brakes, and room was given from John Momeyer there at apex, so no contact was made. They find their way back onto the racing line. It did kind of separate those 2 cars a little bit from that yellow and green car of Larry Haas.
Back into the stadium section once again. Schulam struggling behind Momeyer. Haas trying to run away up in front of them for that top 5 position. Out of the Sachs curve they fly down towards the south curve, and now Schulam has a run, but no place to take it into this double right-hander.
Really struggling for grip. I saw you point out in our chat behind the scenes here, these cars are actually all on the wet tires. I think that's why we see such a huge gap between 4th place and 5th place, is just in the dry conditions, the wet tires are not producing that lap time.
And Larry Haas unfortunately lost the grip off the final corner, hit the inside wall a little bit, and that's what's put him back at the back. Up at the front, Rondeau versus Steele, already pulling away from Doug Bonchignon by about 1.5 seconds. If Matt can hold on to the slipstream, he'll definitely get a big dose of it coming down the Parabolica, which is where they just were before that hairpin. but he's got to be a little bit closer than that, I'm pretty sure.
Check out this GSRC replay here. I bet you this is going to be Will Castillo on the opening lap. So he's to the inside, and now he's to the outside, and cold tires and just a skosh off of that racing line. That's how slippery it can definitely be. And kind of to my point about this GT battle on the racetrack, I feel like Matt Steele has kind of got two options right here. If he hangs out behind Marc Rondeau, to your point, he is pulling a little bit of a gap between Bacchignone. Do you kind of hang out, not provide any pressure, maybe hope that that gap opens up and then you can make your move? Or do you feel like you're just faster and outright pace that you can go and attack Rondeau?
Meanwhile, Ian Roche feels like he's faster in pace. He's been trying on this since lap 1, but Dustin Heindel says it's not done yet. He's going to try and fight back coming up to the Mercedes arena. You often see this. It really sets cars up for a good chance to try and attack into the left-hander, but no, Dustin Heindel will not be able to go on the offensive there, and he will stay behind Ian Roche with a nice pass here on lap 4 for P2.
Ian did a really nice job. Oh, but now he gets way wide and into the gravel. That's going to give an opportunity to Heindel. He's on the wrong side of the road, though, and it is so narrow. So even though that Marlboro number 2 car just went way off track, he was able to at least gather it back up, and the next corner was, in fact, a left-hander. So kind of secured that position back after making a big mistake.
Heindel on back-to-back podiums, looking to get another second place potentially here. If he can just get right back ahead of Ian Roche. But Ian Roche definitely been doing a good job in this race, even though we haven't seen him much in the latter half of the season. Dylan Scott, in the meantime, completely loses grip, comes to a halt, but 2 spots go by. And that's why these two are now fighting for P2.
That was a bit of an interesting one. I would have thought that maybe tire temperature wouldn't have been an issue kind of a handful of laps into this race. Maybe the car is just a little bit loose. Maybe the hybrid system kind of randomly kicked in there, but definitely a couple of oversteer moments early on for these prototype racers.
Definitely looks like it's been a bit unsteady for a few drivers out there. Ooh, look at Matt Steele once again. This is coming up to the stadium section, I think. No, this is up to turn 2, 3, and 4. Ooh, and he is right where he needs to be. Gets a good exit. Coming down to the parabolica. The gap is about 0.3 of a second, and I can already see it coming down.
Let's see if he is close enough to make a lunge here in the brake zone. That toe is, in fact, working. There goes Rondeau, defensive, right in the middle of the racetrack, really deep from the number 6 car, really deep from Rondeau, over, under, and actually a little bit of door-to-door contact. Matt Steele lifts off of the accelerator and allows Rondeau back through. I think that was the gentlemanly thing. He definitely got in too deep. I know that Rondeau was in way too deep as well, but I don't think that Matt Steele wanted to drive his competitor off of the racetrack.
Yeah, they definitely want fair racing out here in this series, so he'll try and do it nice and clean. But look who that helped out. Suddenly, Bacchignone is down under a second behind them, so he is definitely hoping they'll continue to battle this hard. And honestly, anybody who has lost a lot of time at the start, I'm looking at Will Castillo, Dylan Scott, are probably hoping that there's maybe a few problems up front to catch up, including that potential rain or maybe traffic like we've got here.
This is Ian Roche and Dustin Heindel making their way through those 3 GT cars that were on those wet weather tires. And you know what? Throw Dylan Scott in there as well. You see him kind of coming into frame right now. Heindel just barely keeping it on the racetrack there. You saw all the tire marks through the gravel on the exit of, call it turn number 11. I think that's going to be a popular spot to really push the issue. Just be careful of that front left tire.
It's not uncommon to see drivers just understeer off on that corner. Try number 2 for Matt Steele. Coming down to the Spitzkara. This time, it looks like Rondeau going to defend well down to the inside, not leaving anything to chance. They both brake as deep as they dare. Last time, we had a car almost being forced off track. This time, it's very clean. And how about that? Marc Rondeau manages to keep Matt Steele back without having to have a little bit of a gracious move from his competitor.
See, does he fake down to the inside here? I thought maybe this would have been a nice passing opportunity. Almost gives him a little bit of tap there onto the bumper. I thought it was a pretty aggressive move from Matt Steele to almost close the door there in turn number 6 as we jump back up to this prototype battle. It seems like Dylan Scott somehow has made his way around both of the cars, both Dustin Heindel and Ian Roche, and now Roche goes up and over the curbs. Dylan Scott saw him down to the inside, and now Heindel's trying to take advantage as well.
Just wrong place, wrong time for Dustin, veering back to the right of the track, unfortunately not giving him a chance to sneak by. Dylan Scott back up to P2 after he had a slide earlier on, came to a complete halt on the track and is very much got the bit between his teeth. Now, unfortunately, he's still about 5 seconds behind Chad Duncan. So if he had hopes for a win, that mistake that he made certainly made it difficult. But I have to say, that's a pretty quick recovery on his part.
And I think that this was such a great piece of avoidance. So let's see how the move first developed. Dylan Scott really pretty much gets a triple slipstream. He's already next to Dustin Heindel. Ian Roche goes defensive, so that forces Dylan back onto the racing line. Just nice and tidy through the hairpin, and a little bit deep from Roche. That's exactly how it all developed, and as we say that, we're having dramas in that GT class as well in the same exact corner.
This is Mark Rondeau now behind Doug Boccignone. He managed to get through at some point. Was that at the hairpin? Is that what you were talking about?
That's exactly what I was mentioning, and you see Rondeau all the way back to third. Boccignone took advantage. It was Matt Steele that came aggressive into turn number 6 all the way up the inside and definitely went door to door with that gray number 11.
So with more cars coming up behind them now, that is Chad Duncan, our leader, getting ready to try and lap this group. He's playing patient. He built himself a good gap, but this is not a good space for him to catch them. That gap has gone from 5 seconds down to 2.5 just in that one run through there. Now he finally finds an opening.
It was the right thing to do, though. You have to be patient. You know that your competitors are going to have to go through that GT traffic as well. Sure, it may not cost them the same amount of time. They might catch them in a different area of the racetrack, but here they are getting held up in turn number 2.
Sometimes the traffic giveth and sometimes the traffic taketh. Whoa, 4 wheels into the grass and going across. And in fact, that is Mark Rondeau that gets collected along with Dylan Scott. Race might be over for Ian Roche as he's missing one of his wheels, unfortunately. But now I wonder how much damage does Scott have? And of course, Mark Rondeau got a big piece of that.
Yeah, I'm trying to check out the in-car view from inside Dylan Scott. I know that there's definitely front-end damage. It looks like pretty significant front-end damage, but nothing that he can't keep driving this car, but definitely cost him the second place. He's going to have to go hunt down Dustin Heindel, and is the car capable of doing it?
Roche had to tow the car into pit lane with the amount of damage. Now, he does have a spare car, so he could try and get back out and finish this race, but he's not in the championship, so there won't be much impetus for him to try and collect some points here if he is not in the mood to carry on after that one. To be fair, though, Ian kind of kept his foot in it off into the grass.
Yeah, I think if race control was looking at that, they probably would be none too happy with Ian Roche's tactics right there. But Matt Steele currently leads the way. If anything, Doug Boccignone, I think, is up for quote-unquote driver of the day right now. Everything that's just kind of been on his plate, he's chomped it on down, and he's right here behind our leader.
Yeah, that's a great point. He's looking incredibly strong today. And I'm trying to think. I feel like we saw him. Yes, he took the win back at the start of the season, but hasn't been able to get on the top step since. He's had a few opportunities that kind of fell in his lap and then slipped through his fingers. And this might be another one of those great chances to finally get back to the top step if he doesn't get turned by Will Castillo in the process.
Sometimes a little bit of patience, like what Jad Duncan was displaying, can go a long ways with your competitors, and Will Castillo almost took out another one right there. So just sometimes you got to lift off of the loud pedal, assess the situation before you run into it.
Yeah, that was a tricky one because Matt wanted to hold on to the racing line, but he had to kind of dive across a little bit earlier than he normally would, and that maybe surprised Will. Thankfully, everybody gets away with it, and Doug and Matt can carry on this fight. We got a replay here. This is going to be what took out Ian Roche. He saw a chance to maybe pick up a spot through the traffic, had to go to the outside. Next thing he knows, car just cannot grip, and Rondeau sees a Marlboro machine sliding across his bow.
And I'm not going to completely fault Roche for being out in the grass. It certainly looked like the GT cars were kind of pushing him out there. I just think that once you're out there, you don't need to stay in the throttle. That's where it all kind of unraveled.
Kind of understand when the battle has been lost, and
yeah.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. But well, sometimes it's hard to want to try and lift in the heat of the moment, I'm sure. Dylan Scott is still going, and he has not been down pit lane. So despite that little bit of contact, it looks like it hasn't hurt him too much because he's still right there with Heindel.
See here, last lap was a 27.4, and okay, the reason why I'm giving a little bit of a chuckle here is timing and scoring doesn't really match up with what these drivers' best laps are. They're definitely taking advantage of the incident point system tonight.
Yeah, that's true. I just noticed that as well. But Dylan Scott might have a good opportunity here as they go by Larry Haas, and they've next got John Momeyer. This is going to balk Dustin Heindel by quite a bit. 4 wide as we had Roche coming out of pit lane, and Dylan timed that one to perfection. He takes P2.
What a move, just opportunistic from Dylan Scott, was able to grab away that second place. I wonder if there's going to be any sort of aero damage here on the straightaway since he's the car that's pushing the air. It doesn't seem like Dustin Heindel is closing in that rapidly, so maybe just having that little bit of track position is all Dylan Scott needed as they both make their way by Jeff Shulam.
Yeah, okay, so his car here on our feed looks pretty clean. On my feed, it definitely looks like he's got some significant nose damage, so that might be false on my end, especially considering he's had the speed to go right back past Dustin Heindel and is only about 5 seconds off of Jad Duncan. So Jad's got to be careful. This race is not over. We still have 12 minutes left to go, and I think Dylan still has eyes set on the top step.
There's a good shot. You can definitely see that front end damage. And then look at the left rear as well. See that at the bumper there. That left rear bumper and diffuser is pushed in. So Dylan Scott definitely took a hefty hit, whether it was from Rondeau or Roche or whichever one of those cars was sliding across the track into him. But great job for putting the virtual visor down, getting back to work, and getting the position back.
So in these 11 minutes, I'm checking our forecast here. It's still showing very, very small percentages, but I can tell you I've been watching the radar, and there's definitely a wall of precipitation that's coming towards the track, but it looks like it's just going to run out of time before the checkered flag comes out. Or at least if you're Jad Duncan, you're hoping that's the case. If you're Will Castillo or Ian Roche, you want that little bit of chaos to start to happen to those in front of you.
And, I mean, look at the sky. I mean, it is gray all around. So I think that if that rain does come, it would cause a lot of chaos. Just the one thing about the guys who started on those wet tires, the damage has already been done. It's not like they're going to be able to gain those positions back. It's just how well can everybody else hang on.
Plus, those wet tires probably don't have much tread left on them either by this stage. So I don't think they'd really be any good as wet tires. Will Castillo just came into the pits, though. Not sure if he had something happen in addition that has sent him down there. As we watch Chad Duncan still leading by about 5.5 seconds over Dylan Scott. Will we see him in the background? There he is, well behind. That 5 seconds looks a lot bigger than it sounds.
I wonder if our second place runner of Dylan Scott is going to have to worry about incident points, because nearly every single lap that I've seen from him, Joe, is pretty much invalidated. Now, that doesn't mean that they're not counting. It just means that he's picked up a 1x off the track, so his fast lap doesn't register, right? However, those incident points definitely add up over the course of an entire race. You combine that with the contact penalty points, might have to be careful.
Yeah, 17 could easily be reached at a track like this if you're pushing just a bit too hard. And Dustin Heindel is going to try and push him as well. We can barely see it there in the background, but the 4 is not giving up on the 08 and trying to take that P2 right back off of him. We're going to take a look at Larry Haas versus John Momeyer. This is for 6th in the GT1 class right now. One of our closest battles on the track, actually, but he's not close enough.
I think what's interesting, Joe, you had made the comment that Will Castillo came down pit lane. He actually put on wet tires, so maybe his spotter has gone down the interstate a couple exits to where it's raining and got a little anxious.
Apparently, yeah. It's again, we're not. Everything mathematically is saying the chances are very small, but maybe some drivers are saying that's still a chance and might as well. But he's pulling off to the side and regretting that decision. Whoa, something's happened to Haas here as the front of the car now missing. Momeyer also looks slow, so I'm going to guess that he was involved in some form or fashion. Oh, he understeers off the track, and Haas takes the position from him, but more drama for these two, unfortunately.
Joe, we will get a replay of this one, and very interesting. They both wrecked in the same corner at the same time, but were not in contact with each other. They're about 150 yards apart on the racetrack.
It was like Murray Walker used to say, they were spinning in sympathy with one another.
Yeah, so John Momeyer does it first. He gets up on the exit curb. So coming out here, he gets up on that exit curb, spins it around, but you see Larry Haas behind was already loose coming out of the corner. Whether he saw his buddy already spun around or if he just had essentially the exact same incident at the exact same time, both of them in the same corner.
And both really with a lot of damage. In fact, that was not for position. That was Boccignone and Steele lapping them. So as they come down to the breaking of the hairpin once again, Steele still ahead of Doug, but it's about a second between them currently. So he could try and make this up. Oh, big moment as Larry was maybe trying to pull off of the racing line. That or the car got loose on the exit.
I think a little bit of a combination of both. And I think that Doug here has done a fantastic job to keep Matt honest. Matt Steele this season has just been pretty much unstoppable. He's won nearly every single race he's entered except for one. He's back on the winning streak. He's back on the pole position streak. So I think that Doug, given that the last, kind of call it second half of the season, there's been some other GT drivers that have kind of moved to the forefront. This is a great redemption drive from Boccignone.
Yeah, I have to say, he's had a pretty darn good season. We've seen a real uptick of pace out of Doug. It's just unfortunate that happened when Matt Steele has turned up, and he's been denied good opportunities to take wins, but he's still been there to try and pick up the pieces and get whatever points he can with many, many podiums throughout. Unfortunately, didn't get one last time, but he was in third. Back at round 9 was the last time he was getting to spray the champagne. And to his credit, he's doing what he needs to do. He's making sure to keep Matt honest. He's making sure that he's in the mirrors of that pink Roxy machine.
Checking in on Dustin Heindel here, who is keeping Dylan Scott honest. Now, Dylan does have that damage still on the front and the back end of that white and black 08 machine. They're working their way through some GT traffic right now. I think Heindel's actually going to get held up a little nervous there through turn number 7 to the outside of the GT car. You see Dylan really kind of being patient with Matt Steele, so that allowed the gap to close down. This is an opportunity. Can Heindel make it 3 wide? They're going to split our leader. Sure enough, Dylan Scott stays in front, though.
Dylan was trying to figure out which side he wanted to go on. I think he was looking to undercut, but he had timed it wrong with Steele and had to check up a second time. Now coming down into the south curve. He's only got about 0.3 of a second gap to Dustin Heindel and about 5 minutes to hold him off. They've lost touch with Jad Duncan now. He's extended up to 7 seconds ahead of this pair. But at least they are past the battling leaders, because I think that was the big issue there, is that the leaders weren't willing to give up time just as much as these weren't.
Dylan was also very nice, especially with Matt Steele as they came up on him. Didn't want to go charging down the inside of our GT class leader, which you shouldn't. Everybody's on the same playground. It doesn't matter if you're in the faster prototype class. You just can't go ramrodding people off the racetrack.
And they do try and teach good interclass traffic manners here in this series. That maybe was a bobble from Scott coming off the hairpin. These cars probably don't like those low-speed corners. They make so much of their speed through the downforce.
They also have that hybrid system, right? So kind of the power delivery can be a little bit odd at times. And I think that these cars have finally been around in iRacing enough that a lot of the drivers have been comfortable enough to start playing with those attack modes as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, they've got some fun little toys to play with inside the cockpit if they want to be the aggressor. And it seems like Dustin does kind of fancy a chance to do so. Oh, straddles the curb, though. That will not help him, and you can see how much that cost him.
See about the run through turn number 1 right here. I feel like Dylan Scott is struggling in more of the higher speed corners, which makes sense, right? If you're struggling with aero damage and you got a lot of understeer, the car is not going to be very good through the high speed stuff. So you saw Dustin Heindel really take advantage kind of through turn number 1. And oh my goodness, this is our lead right here. Doug Boccignone is all over the back of Matt Steele, headed down towards turn number 2.
He needs a great exit coming out of the Parabolica entry here. He's nice and tidy down to the inside, and this opens up the left-hander. This is exactly what he needs. He's got that gap coming down as they pick up speed, 140 miles an hour, and still more to go. They'll start to approach that braking zone now that it straightens out. 160, finally gets onto the binders, but he can't quite get the overlap that he needs.
Our leader being pretty clever, kind of feinting from the middle of the racetrack back over to the racing line once he realized Doug wasn't going to kind of make that lunge down the inside. I think that we've got a change there for second place. Dylan Scott, never mind, is going to hang on to it. Here's the over-under, a battle. Oh my goodness, there goes Heindel going spinning around in turn number 15. He's going to have to get it collected back up, and we've got rain on the track, Joe.
Oh, wow. It's coming right at the very end. It's too late to try and take tires. There, yes, you can see it starting to come down. It has come right at the very end. Jad Duncan leads by about 10 seconds. If he can just survive this lap and keep it on the black stuff, he can bring this one home.
I wonder how slippery this is going to be. Traditionally, Hockenheim, there's some grippy parts of this racetrack, but Sector 3, that turn 11 through turn 16, is an ice rink if you are offline, and it is.
I don't see the drop starting to form on the windscreen here, so I think he's okay for now. So if it is raining, it's very, very light at the moment. Doug Boccignone still watching, still knows he's got a chance, and I think, so he's going to get the white flag next time by, because Jad Duncan still has a whole nother lap to go around here.
I've got an eye on our prototype leader. He's coming through our final stadium section right now, so he's going to be taking the white flag, crossing start-finish line as we speak. And Joe, I think to your point, there's no way he's going to catch this GT group, so they will have this whole extra lap.
Indeed. In fact, they're coming through the Mercedes arena now. Now it's looking like it's coming down even harder for them. Surely they've got to be feeling it out on the circuit. Nobody's going to dare to try and put tires on at this stage, though. Jad Duncan is almost halfway done with the lap already on his side. Leaders now will get the 1 to go signal up from the top. It is a test of nerves out there. It is a test of who can figure out where the grip is on this damp final lap.
Here is our prototype leader coming out of that turn number 6 hairpin. Dive into this turn 7. Hit the brakes for turn 8, and you can see the raindrops on the TV cameras. It seems like the tire temperature, though, is still in the racetrack and still underneath the race car. Just got to keep it together for another handful of turns.
So far, it looks like he hasn't lost too much pace out there, but it won't matter for all but more of 2 or 3 more corners. He does have traffic in the form of Momeyer in front of him. He can, in fact, lift and let him go. He's got that much of a gap as he comes around the final corner. Jad Duncan is going to get himself his 3rd win of the season here at Germany.
Nicely controlled race from that black and yellow number 83. Dylan Scott crosses the line in 2nd place, and Dustin Heindel actually does a great job to come back, only be 3 seconds behind Dylan Scott there in 3rd place. See Ian Roche there cross the line in 4th. I can tell you that Matt Steele is still currently ahead of Doug Boccignone and has actually extended the gap maybe by about a second or so.
It's looking proper wet now. Look at this. We're getting some rooster tails from the cars, so they're definitely off of optimum grip on the track. Doug still within a second of him. The tiniest bobble from Matt Steele could give this one away. While he might have the championship all but wrapped up here, he wants to take as many wins as he can and deny Doug Boccignone once again. And he will, it looks like, as he creeps out of the final turn, and Matt Steele somehow holds on for another win.
And I'm looking at timing and scoring right here. Talk about escaping near death in terms of the points championship. Mark Rondeau, who was running in 2nd place at the time, is going to finish in 3rd. Remember, he had that huge incident, pretty much wrote off the car, had to come in, get his fast repair, got back out on the racetrack, made up a ton of time, and here he is on the podium.
Just an impressive job. I know Robert Leclerc had a black flag at the end, so he was, I think, a lap behind because he must have gotten passed by the leaders, but he must have probably also gotten a time penalty from that black flag at the end. Wow, unpredictable conditions at the end of this race, and it sees Jad Duncan build up enough of a gap that he can hold on to the end and take our victory at Porsche home turf here at Hockenheim Ring. So Dylan Scott will come home in 2nd behind him, and Dustin Heindel will wind up in 3rd. Then it's Ian Roche in 4th position, getting back out on track, but unfortunately 2 laps down. Will Castillo, unfortunately, unable to see the end, Joey, as he will be our only DNF.
Over to our GT category, it is Matt Steele picking up another win. Doug Boccignone finishing there in 2nd place. Mark Rondeau does finish on the podium in 3rd. Robert Leclerc, like you said, had that black flag on the last lap, drops him down to 4th. Jeff Schulam in 5th. Larry Haas in 6th. John Momeyer will finish in 7th.
And pardon me, that was the 2nd win of the season for Jad Duncan, who looks like he's actually ready to chat with us. So Why don't we have a little bit of conversation with Jad about that one, because I'm sure it was a bit nerve-wracking at the end. Jad, we saw what looked like pretty significant rain from the TV screens. What was it like from inside the car there at the finish? Could you really feel the difference in grip?
Yeah, it was getting a little scary. You saw I just slowed down at the end and followed everyone instead of trying to push or pass or anything. Just went as slow and steady as I could because it was starting to get slick. It wasn't horrible yet.
I'm sure not what you wanted at the end, especially with how the race seemed to kind of come your way. You'd built up the gap. Did you back off because of that gap, or were you still pushing hard just in case others were quicker in the rain than you?
It was a little of both. I kept staring at the sky and then forcing myself concentrate, get back on the race and concentrate, figuring out, is there such thing as an anti-rain dance going the whole time? And when do I pit? How wet do I let it go? So there were a lot of concerns with the traffic and everything. It was fun. It would have been great to see a bigger field tonight. It's a little surprising.
Yeah, a bit disappointing, but sometimes that happens at the ends of the season. Now, we are on win number 2, but you've been a bit of feast or famine, it seems. Either you're on the podium or you wind up a bit farther back at the finish. What do you mostly attribute that to in this series?
I have decent pace. If I make stupid mistakes or lose concentration, I crash and finish in the back. So I have to just make sure to drive clean. And the old to finish first you must finish thing. So I need to work on consistency, I think, is the issue.
That sounds like a good plan. Well, today, very consistent, very controlled drive. Congratulations on the win.
Thank you.
That was Jad Duncan, victor in the prototypes. He is joined on the top step by Matt Steele. Joey has caught up with the winner in the GT1 class.
Well, Matt, you found victory lane again, albeit a little bit more busy this time.
A little scrappier, yeah. It was fun, though. That was a good race.
So you had your first fight with Rondeau down there, and it took you a handful of laps to finally get that move done, and it seemed like you got the elbows out.
Yeah, I think, that's going into comp review, so we'll see what happens out of that one. But, yeah, I was trying on the outside. He kept going defensive, and I kept trying on the outside, so wasn't getting anywhere with that. So when I had a good run the other time, I just kind of stayed left, pretending I was going to stay on the outside again, let him not get a little more comfortable, and then I just kind of threw it down. Yeah, it was definitely an aggressive move, but I couldn't figure out any other way I'd be able to make something stick. So we'll see what they have to say about that. But yeah, it was a good fight, and Doug was on pace, man. He kept me honest the whole time. We were right with each other the whole time.
Well, you kind of led me into my next question here. It seemed like Doug was actually closing in on you in the last part of the race, but you were a little bit faster once that rain actually started to fall.
Yeah, well, I was starting to get a little bit of a gap, like just eking out a tiny bit here and there, but then we came up on some lap traffic, and I had a real big slowdown in the last 2 corners, which got him right up on me, so I had to start going defensive, and then we were just kind of stuck together in the draft. But yeah, once the rain started coming, it was a little bit better. I was kind of hoping the rain would get out there sooner. I was practicing in the wet a lot this week and was having a lot of fun with it, but it just came too little too late.
Well, congrats on another win here in the POC, and thanks for coming out and racing with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for what you do.
That was Matt Steele, the winner there in the GT category. I think Doug might be up next with Joe with his side of the story.
Indeed. Second in the points and second on the track today, Doug. It looked like you were trying to hassle Matt as much as you could. Was there anything more you could do to pry that first from his hands?
Yeah, it was tough. He had pretty much the same pace as me. I think my only chance was when he and Rondo kind of got together, and I wasn't able to get by both of them.
Yeah, sometimes it's just not in the cards, even as much as you want it in those situations. Even still, with how much the rain was coming down at the very end, what were you feeling inside the car? Was it tough to hold on to the back of Steele?
The car felt really good. It's at the start of the final lap, I noticed the spray coming up pretty high off of the back of Matt's car. And so I backed off just a hair and I really shouldn't have. I don't think I needed to. And he just got enough of a gap, so there was really no challenge on that last lap.
It's kind of a battle of best of the rest between you and Marc Rondeau here at the end. You came in pretty close on points, but you beat him today. So how does that change your mindset for the final 2 rounds? Are you going to be keeping an eye on him, or does second in the championship not concern you?
Of course, I want to finish in front of him. It's been a long time since I've been back on the podium, so I'm glad to be here, and had some electrical problems last race that knocked me out just before the race started. So I was happy that my power stayed on tonight. Hopefully we'll have smooth sailing the next 2 races.
I'm really hoping so. We'd love to see you guys get to fight mano a mano out there. Congratulations, though, on another podium today.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Appreciate it.
Doug Bacchignon, our second place finisher. And I believe it looks like we might have Dylan Scott, as Joey has caught up with our second place finisher in the prototypes.
Yeah, Dylan, first of all, congratulations on the second place.
It was a bit of a messy one, but we got there in the end, right?
It was a lot going on. You had your hands full from start to finish. Is that what it was like from your point of view as well?
Well, I mean, it just mimics life. I've moved houses, bought a puppy. I was fixing a dryer just 2 hours ago that's broken down. Life's a little bit all over the place. So, and then it took me a minute to realize, why isn't the car doing what I expect it to do? Well, because I was on the wrong setup. It took me a minute. I figured it out slowly. And then at the end, I hit something on my steering wheel and changed the setting and then panicked, hit it again and made it worse. So, yeah, it was a little chaotic, but it's all right. We got there.
Well, Joe and I fully support of having a new puppy in the household. We're both big dog lovers over here. But how difficult was it to drive with all that damage once that huge incident pretty much happened in your lap?
Yeah, well, I mean, it did get a little funky. I think that's starting to lose a little front end there. So, I tried to adapt. I had good pace, and then I would lose pace, and then good pace and lose pace. And then Dustin was on it, of course. We had a fun little battle at the end. It was fun. I didn't see him coming, but, that's entertainment for you.
I think you did a great job, basically with your hands full tonight. Congratulations on that second, and thanks for coming out and racing with us.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
That was Dylan Scott, your second place finisher in prototypes.
Which takes us to Dustin Heindel, our last driver we're going to be talking to, third place in the prototypes. And my goodness, Dustin, you were also part of that battle between Ian and Dylan and you. That looked like an almighty scrap. Were you smiling inside the cockpit?
Yeah, my hands are just white knuckle tired from that. I was fighting the wheels so hard to just try to stay alive while staying competitive. So it was pretty rough.
Indeed. And in fact, you were kind of around a lot of action all race long. Did you expect it to be this crazy with so few cars out there?
Not really, no. We were really on top of each other, especially me and Dylan at the end. I'm curious how that will turn out in post. We're going to talk about it, but we were just all over each other. It was very, very close.
Well, this week we see a track that has a lot of long straight line sections where you can really open up the throttle. And while we might get a couple of those next week, it's going to be narrow and twisty. It's going to be VIR. How do you see yourself faring there?
VIR in a GTP sounds terrifying, especially with traffic. Oh my gosh, you might as well put us on the Nürburgring.
Well, they do call it the mini green hell sometimes, so that seems fitting. But best of luck. I feel like you guys, you always seem to manage to find a way to work this all out, so I have faith in you.
Yeah, thanks.
It was Dustin Heindel, who finishes third today here at Hockenheim. And, of course, we are going to wrap it up with a big thank you to the sponsors of this series before we head out. Porsche, there is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And, of course, Top Gun MG. You can find out how to contact them at topgunmg.com as well. Thanks to the team today, Joey, Christian, and Dougie. Make sure to check out our social media, our website, and a merchandise store. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next time out, Virginia International Raceway will take place on Monday, December 16th at 10 p.m. Eastern. And don't forget, we don't just have that race to go, but one more even after that. However, be sure to check out our other broadcasts that we have listed here. And until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.
Wow.